I always wondered why they wear like 5 layers of clothing and robes in the Harry Potter films, but being here in Edinburgh, Scotland, I understand. I understand.
On paper, you might think that Dublin, Ireland, and Edinburgh, Scotland would be incredibly similar. Both cities are the capitals of historic Celtic nations, both sit on rugged coasts in the British Isles, and both have a strong sense of identity, pride, and place. While these things are true, both on paper and off, both cities are densely packed with unique and distinctive cultures, architecture, and cityscapes. Now here on A Sense of Travel, my goal is to capture the 5 senses of as many cities, countries, and natural landmarks all across the world as I possibly can, so that I can accurately immerse you into the physical experience of those places through the screen. That said, today I'm diving into more than just the things you can experience through photography and bullet lists. How do Dublin and Edinburgh stack up in the way they smell, the way the air feels, the ambience and the lore that creates the magic of the atmosphere, the sounds that fill your ears in the city streets, and, of course, which tastes define each experience? We'll find out today in the latest installment of Comparing the Senses, Dublin versus Edinburgh. After the video, be sure to comment on which of these 2 cities you feel has an experience that fits your persona more. I'm Michael, and this is A Sense of Travel. Let's dive in. So before we take on the senses, let's take a quick look at some very quick facts about each city, in case you aren't familiar with either one. Dublin is the fun-loving capital of Ireland, sitting on the country's east coast at the edge of the Irish Sea and along the River Liffey, with a population of nearly 600,000 people and over 1.5 million people in its metro area. Edinburgh is the mystical capital of Scotland, one of the constituent countries that make up the United Kingdom. Slightly smaller than Dublin, just over 500,000 people live in Edinburgh's city limits, and nearly 1 million in its metro area. Both cities and their respective countries sit on the British Isles, although British here doesn't imply that they're part of the United Kingdom. With the exception of Northern Ireland, the Republic of Ireland is very much its own independent country. So the first thing to look at when stacking up Dublin and Edinburgh is perhaps the most obvious thing: their cityscapes. We'll kick off in Dublin. Dublin's city centre somehow manages to feel like both a vibrant and youthful hub, and also a small, charming seaside port village. A dense blanket of brick, low-rise buildings sit beneath the horizon of the Wicklow Mountains, occasionally punctured by bronze domes, stone steeples, smokestacks, and of course, sharp metallic monuments. Cutting through the sea of low-rise buildings is the nearly black water of the River Liffey, which is spanned by dozens of both small and large bridges.
This is still one of my favorite bridges in the world. I mean, come on, guys, it's a harp. It's a harp. That's so cool.
Those dense cobbled streets, blanketed in old brick, dark wooden bay windows, and rickety old signs, are filled with shops, cafes, and of course, pubs. Despite all that red and brown brick, Dublin's cityscape is remarkably green year-round and is filled with dozens of square parks right in the heart of the urban patchwork. At the center of quite a few of these lively, cozy squares are old, Gothic stone churches and cathedrals, including Christ Church, St. Alban's, and St. Patrick's Cathedrals, whose pointed spires are among the tallest points in the city. The Temple Bar is a district right in the heart of the city center that was once akin to a red light district. Today, it's pretty synonymous with that Irish pub spirit. Old, cobbled, car-free roads wind through the cozy brick storefronts and pubs, sticky with alcohol from the last night's fun. Bold storefronts of red and black painted wood adorn many of the storied pubs, most of which are filled with cozy wood floors and walls, old stone fireplaces, dim lighting, TV screens showing football and cricket, and of course, live music. As you wander the cobbled streets of Dublin city centre, feeling the uneven, weathered, and often slippery stones beneath your feet, picture brick, Victorian buildings of 4 to 6 stories on either side of you. Rows of brick and stone houses, guarded by old iron fences and built in a grungy, rather Charles Dickens-evoking style, alongside more ornamental Georgian-style architecture, line the neighborhood streets in the city center, where at times there's a bit of an industrial feel. It's true that in Dublin, at any random turn, you might stumble upon royal cobbled plazas like the Dublin Castle or the decorative classic Victorian Market Arcade on George's Street. Edinburgh, along with many of its European neighbors like Rome and Lisbon, is a city on 7 hills. While Dublin appears as a sea of brick from above, Edinburgh is a sea of grey stone, weathered in soot and moisture, with dozens of sharp spires piercing the sky at every turn. Off in the distance, beyond the sea of stone, you can peek at the actual sea, a soft, deep blue. In the other direction, the green and rugged Arthur's Seat towers above the city, joining dozens of other low-rolling hills, a hazy blue in the mist. Edinburgh's story began on Castle Rock, an extinct volcano and the towering hillside home of Edinburgh Castle. Leading up to that hillside is the Royal Mile, a regal roadway whose buildings, streets, and hidden alleyways are almost entirely made up of an old, weathered, damp gray stone. This isn't limited to the mile. As you imagine your surroundings in the misty cityscape, no matter where you are, you'll be surrounded by Gothic and Georgian stone structures with ornate steeples, wrought iron spires, and stone-paved paths. Like Dublin, Edinburgh is home to countless pubs, cafes, and shops, but the shops here specialize in tweed and tartan instead. Almost everything is built from stone. While the outside world is brisk and chilly thanks to that temperate maritime climate, every little shop, tavern, pub, and cafe has the character of a warm, cozy little refuge. Little staircases and pathways called closes wind up and down the hills of the city, leading deeper and deeper into the patchwork of the old town. While most of Edinburgh is an elegant grey stone, Victoria Street is a colorful, cobbled, winding alley that many have considered to be the inspiration of Diagon Alley. The Victorian windows and storefronts burst in colors of bright blue, yellow, teal, orange, and pink, with bold red window frames and an eclectic blend of curious shops, a couple of which are, of course, themed to Harry Potter. Now, the city's overall color palettes differ quite a bit in regard to the cityscapes, as indicated here. When you see a video or a picture of a place and you try to imagine what it must feel like to actually be there, an important component of that is the way the air smells. Let's see how Dublin and Edinburgh stack up. Dublin's scentscape matches its already nautical vibe. Salty air breezing in from the sea, alongside that fishy, brackish water from the Liffey, fills your nostrils throughout town, joined by scents of damp stone and brick, wet green grass, pub foods, and a bit of alcohol stuck to the old, cobbled stones from the previous night's fun. There's also that consistent and happiness-inducing scent of roasting coffee from the countless cafes. While there's no escaping the typical city sense of cars and auto fumes in the tight streets of the town, they blend strangely well with a scent of smoking barley and wheat from the nearby Guinness factory. All things considered, a Dublin-scented candle, were I to make one, would include the notes of saltwater, damp stone, clover, whiskey, roasting coffee, and barley. Like Dublin, Edinburgh has a nautical nature, but there's more of a ruggedness to the scentscape here. The often misty air that you'll feel on your skin throughout the day keeps the blanket of mossy stone damp and moist, a scent that almost radiates from the buildings and cobbles. The air here, thanks to the sea and the vast amount of green space, smells brisk and fresh, and certainly salty. Although, as you stroll, you'll catch the occasional puff of vape and cigarette smoke to balance it out. Scents of fresh rain, wet grass, and damp earth fill your nostrils throughout the city, especially in places like Arthur's Seat or Calton Hill. All things considered, if I were to make an Edinburgh-scented candle, it would include notes of mossy stone, fresh rain, damp earth, smoke, and saltwater. The tastes of Dublin and Edinburgh are tough to compare outright because, in a lot of ways, they're incredibly similar, from their full breakfasts to their seafood and even their whiskeys, although this might get me yelled at in the comments. Despite those similarities, however, each city and country has a few dishes that really set one apart from the other. Let's take a look at some of the tastes that capture each city. A lot of people associate Ireland with potatoes and Guinness, and while that's true in part, there's a ton more to the culinary scene here. Here are just a few of those city-defining tastes in Dublin. Soda bread and Guinness stew. Almost as Irish as Guinness itself is soda bread. A soda bread is thick, fluffy, and almost like a sourdough, but more moist. Tons of things can be served with soda bread, but in my case, I tried it with a delicious and rich Guinness and beef stew with carrots and potatoes. Fish and chips. Now, fish and chips may be more commonly associated with Ireland's British neighbor, but you really can't talk about the Irish cuisine without bringing fish and chips to the table. Fried Atlantic cod, crispy fries, rich mushy peas, and a lot of malt vinegar are essential pieces of both Ireland and its British neighbor. North Atlantic salmon. Whether you're in Dublin or not, the taste of Ireland can't be defined without salmon. Some of the freshest and most tasteful salmon you'll ever taste can be found here, and in my case, it came soaked in Guinness and resting on brown bread. Perhaps you're noticing a bit of a theme here. Guinness is good for you. Oh, and speaking of, Guinness. Now, it may be because I'm such a coffee lover, but I fell in love with Guinness the first time I tasted it, and yes, it really does taste fresher and better in Dublin. You really can't go anywhere in the country without finding a pint of Guinness, and wow, it's perfect. It's bitter, it's cold, it's frothy. I mean, what more could you ask for? As I mentioned, there are quite a few similarities in the culinary scenes of Dublin and Edinburgh, but I found Scottish food in general to be a bit heavier and heartier, which I guess makes sense. Edinburgh is misty and mysterious, so naturally the food should be cozy. Here are a few of the Scottish dishes that really capture the taste of the city. Haggis.
About to eat haggis for the first time, and I'm kind of scared. But I've eaten guinea pig before, so, I mean, how bad can it be, really?
Haggis is a sheep's stomach, cooked in its own blood. But at a cool little sports pub on the Royal Mile, I faced my American fears and I ate it. Doused in potatoes and gravy, haggis tastes like, well, potatoes and gravy. It has the consistency of ground beef, and honestly, I quite liked it. I mean, it does have a slightly irony taste afterward because, you know, blood. Cullen skink. This hearty, thick hot soup consists of leeks, potatoes, smoked haddock, and onions. Served with brown bread, the Cullen skink perfectly balances each of these flavors and will warm you right up on a chilly Scottish evening. Scottish porridge. Porridge may seem like a pretty common component of breakfast just about anywhere, but Scottish oats are a bit different. These oats are ground from oat groats rather than cut, and it's done right here in Scotland. Filled in with seeds, fruits, and berries, this warm bowl of porridge is cozy and filling, and a perfect pairing for a mug of coffee on a rainy morning. Scotch pies. Scotch pies can be a quick pick-me-up, or if you're willing to eat several, a full-on meal. These little flaky pies are filled with seasoned beef fat and are very warm and hearty, and filling, a common theme among Scottish food. There's no clear winner in the realm of cuisine here, as both cities and their respective countries have unique dishes and taste palettes to bring to the table. And it's truly up to personal preference. This is also not even close to a comprehensive list of the defining tastes of each city. Dublin may be a major city, but that doesn't make it a big city, and thankfully, that means the soundscape here is actually kind of quiet and peaceful. As you picture yourself inside the video on your screen, you'll notice sounds like the ding of tram lines, laser tag remission crosswalk signals, and the cry of seagulls, creating a bustling but calm atmosphere, and lots of wind. Lots and lots of wind. At its loudest, especially in places like O'Connell Street, Grafton Street, and the Temple Bar, street music, the bustle of pub crawlers and shoppers, and live music from the restaurants and bars fill the otherwise soft-sounding air. Edinburgh is pretty similar to Dublin in the sense that while it's a major city and the Scottish capital, it ain't that big. The soundscape here reflects that, but that isn't to say it sounds like a small, sleepy village either. The sounds of seagulls crying above the chimneys regularly fills your ears, above crowds of tourists and pedestrians, and maybe even a few locals, bells chiming from the towers throughout town, and footsteps on stone. Cars and double-decker buses rumble along the cobbled stones, joining the screech of Edinburgh's trams along their tracks. In some of those rugged trails and mystical parks, there's a rather mystical soundscape of cawing crows, birds chirping, and bursts of wind. Where Edinburgh really stands apart from Dublin is that famous sound of Scottish bagpipes. If you're on the Royal Mile, these are inescapable. Being on an island, surrounded by, of course, water, Dublin experiences a maritime climate, which means mild to warm summers, cool winters, and an overall moderate feel. Dublin is pretty far north, but that good old Atlantic Gulf Stream keeps this part of the world a lot warmer than it otherwise would be at this latitude. Fun fact though, Dublin is actually home to its own little microclimate. Thanks to being sheltered by the Wicklow Mountains to the south and Howth Head to the north, Dublin is generally warmer and drier than the rest of Ireland, which can tend to be cool and rainy for most of the year. Edinburgh is only slightly further north than Dublin, and it's still a maritime climate. That said, the weather comparison between the two cities is, well, not much of one. I suppose the main difference is that Edinburgh doesn't have the same microclimate effect. So what do I mean when I talk about the comparison of the ambience and the lore of each city? Well, for starters, I'm a strong proponent of the idea that to really capture the spirit and the magic of places around the world, you have to let your own imagination run a bit wild. After all, urban legends, ancient lore, and dramatized history are a big part of the identity of cities and countries worldwide. Letting fantasy and folklore infiltrate your mind as you wander about can really bring out the mystique and the charm in different places. Let's start with Dublin. If Dublin were a person, they'd be glowing heartily after a pint or 5 of Guinness, with a certain twinkle in their eye. While Dublin isn't the kind of place you'd be likely to find a leprechaun, it's easy to feel that same fun and maybe even mischievous sensation. What really does it is the coziness and that common craving of the crack, the Irish phrase for having a good time, and it almost doesn't seem burdened by the outside world. Dublin is a city that reminds you that while you're not in the tropics, you're definitely on an island. There's a truly cozy, remote, and almost disconnected feeling about Dublin, and I mean that in the best way possible. Even though it's Ireland's largest city, you can't shake the feeling that you're really in a big seaside village. There are so many charming old pubs, local cafes, and quiet Georgian neighborhoods that it almost feels like every pub owner knows their regulars by name. Frankly speaking, that nautical atmosphere we've been talking about plays into that remoteness. Whether it's the seagulls, the ornate old ships on the Liffey, or a constantly salty air, you never feel far from the sea. I guess the best way I could sum up the vibe and the atmosphere of Dublin is the old drunken sailor song. Nautical, fun, and full of fiddles. It's hard to talk about Edinburgh without using the words mystical, spooky, magical, and rugged. There's a tangible sense of lore and history that have shaped this misty Scottish city, and it influences every moment you spend wandering about the narrow, cobbled streets and hillside castle ruins. I think this is best felt on the climb up Arthur's Seat, where, if the fog is just right, you're whisked away into the grandiose quests of legendary knights, with a touch of magic that suggests Merlin himself wandered these hillsides. That blend of magical and medieval legend spreads throughout the old town, where narrow, mossy stone pathways, that haunting but beautiful Edinburgh castle, and curious apothecaries await, dressed in facades of beautiful, elegant old stone. The rugged and dramatic landscape against the edge of the sea, paired with the kilt-wearing bagpipers, cozy pubs, tartan shops, mystical ruins, royal promenades, and magical shops, whisk you into a world where unicorns, knights, and wizards coexist with the proud Scots of today. The idea here isn't to pit these two cities up against each other. In fact, the idea is to celebrate the fact that there's so much world to discover, experience, and explore. Thanks for diving into the 5 senses of Dublin and Edinburgh with me today, and stay tuned for more comparison videos in the near future. As always, thanks so much for watching. I'll catch you next time.